consultant. And on the call are the other consultants, and we're going to be hearing from the Southwest South Central Regional Consultant, Beth Gayton. Beth, glad you're with us. Our other guest today is Autumn Jackson, who's from Literacy Network and is the Senior Director of their ESL classes. You are here to learn more about workplace literacy, fee for service. It's a program that's really been around for quite some time and something that some literacy programs have been very successful using, both as a way to reach students that they might not be able to reach otherwise, but also as a way to increase revenue for their programs. One of the things that we're doing on today's webinar is an opportunity for you to physically ask questions. If you look at your dashboard, that's the thing with the little orange arrow. Underneath that orange arrow, there's a place where you can raise your hand. And as you raise your hand, you will be recognized. Either Anna or Beth will be able to see whose hand is raised, and they'll give you an opportunity to ask your questions. There is also a chat box, but we won't have to use that today unless you would prefer to put your question there. If you want to see materials for today, as you heard Anna say earlier, they were attached to the meeting reminder that you received, and they should be on your dashboard. But if you don't see them there, just know that they're in the meeting reminder that you received today and yesterday. So with that, I think we will, now have we started recording? And I will introduce Beth, and you can take it from there, Beth. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Can everyone, well, I was going to say, can everyone hear me? But okay. So today, we're going to go through the basics of workplace literacy. We're going to look at a successful program model, and that's where Autumn is going to take over the presentation and really talk about how Literacy Network started and continues actually to grow their very successful workplace literacy model. And then we're going to talk specifically about ways you can get started. And like Marcia said, please do feel free to ask questions throughout the training. Autumn and I are both happy to stop and talk about questions, or at the end we'll have some time also. So first, we're going to take a quick poll. Anna, do you have the poll to come up, or? Oh, okay. So I can't see it from my screen, so I'm gonna just let everybody go through the poll, and then Anna can just let me know, if you can let me know when people have answered.
Okay, so the poll says, has your agency ever implemented workplace literacy classes? So please select one of those. And I'm wondering, okay, so I see we are at 33. I'm going to close the poll. And it shows that 67% said yes and 33% say no.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for doing that.
I have one more. There's one more poll I'm going to pull up.
Oh, sure.
And then the questions here are, which statement best describes your program? And choose one of these. We hope to offer workplace literacy in the next year, or we are just exploring the possibility at this time. So Beth, I'll let you know when those results are in.
Perfect.
And so it looks like we're at 80% say we hope to offer workplace literacy in the next year, and 20% we are just exploring the possibility at this time.
Okay, sounds great. So we're going to dive right in then. When we're looking at workplace literacy instruction, there are some pretty big differences between just our general ESL instruction and what we want to do to modify it so that it's workplace literacy. So first of all, is that it's really student-centered and employer-centered. So it's vital to know what your students want from the class, but also what your employers want, and those don't always match up, which is something that Autumn is going to talk a little bit about later when talking about some potential challenges. Really focus on task-based, which I know a lot of us do in our general classes already, but what do learners need to do at work? And so we're really looking at our lesson plan objectives to be very actionable, like describe an accident, fill out a request form, follow machine operating instructions, report an injury, request time off. So very actionable objectives for our lessons. Authentic language and practice. This is where I feel like workplace literacy I've had more fun teaching workplace literacy than any other type of ESL class just because of this. You really get to learn something new about the specific work that the employees are doing and focus 100% focus classes on what they're doing at work. So really needing to know, what are they saying at work? Are they talking about specific machines? Are they speaking and listening more? Are they reading and writing more? Who are they talking with? So one of my favorite activities that I did at manufacturing plant was they really needed to focus on forklift, communicating while they're driving the forklifts. And so we turned our chairs into forklifts, and it was something hands-on that was very authentic to what they do in their day-to-day work. I think one of the most challenging parts of workplace literacy can be that it doesn't always correlate with level. So we might have a level 1 student who really needs to focus on the very, very basics. But at work, they have to be able to describe a reason for downtime to a supervisor, which means they would need to be able to use the past tense. They need different vocabulary than we might normally teach a level 1 student. And so this can be a challenge, but it's definitely doable. This is where we're really focusing on hands-on, authentic practice, getting as much realia from the company as possible, and just making it, like I said, as hands-on as possible, but really recognizing the fact that what employees need to do immediately in their work lives or their work communication may not match up easily with their level. And then we talk a lot about accuracy and fluency and error correction in general ESL classes. I think that idea is even more important in workplace literacy. So we're really wanting to make sure that employees are empowered and confident to speak English at work. Not that it's always going to be correct and perfect, but that they are speaking more English every single week that we're offering classes. So really focus on the building confidence and focusing a lot on the fluency in class so that they are more able to go out onto the floor in their jobs and speak more, even if it's not perfect English. So some kind of sample workplace English tasks are on this list. I think that the asking for clarification is one of the key, sorry, I had a big truck passing by. I'll just close the windows. Is one of the key elements of workplace English. It's something that I incorporated in every single class session I taught. The employees are in a situation where they need to speak English now. They're doing it now, and it's going to take a long time to master the competencies that we work on in class, but that asking for clarification is something that's just vital for a good relationship with coworkers and supervisors. So it's something that I incorporated in every single session throughout every term of the workplace English programming that I gave. But these are some examples of some tasks that we might focus on for workplace English. Autumn is going to talk a bit more about connecting with employers, which is obviously one of the big steps in workplace literacy programming. Just to get us started on thinking about it, what we've learned from employers and from studies is that it's really a huge benefit to employees, but workplace literacy is a huge benefit to employers. Effective communication just leads to smoother operation, and there's always, with a smoother operation, there's positive financial outcomes. So there's improved safety. Workplace literacy classes are a great way to reinforce safety team meetings or safety procedures. There's increased productivity because there's less downtime stemming from errors or things resulting from miscommunication or misunderstanding. Definitely better customer service when your employees are more confident and better able to communicate. And then just one thing that I've really enjoyed seeing is some companies actually take their offering to the next level, and they add it as part of their benefits package. So on-site, on-time English classes as part of an employee benefit. And I think that really goes to improving employee satisfaction and retention. So lots of really great benefits for our employer partners as well. And again, like I mentioned, Autumn is going to talk a bit more about how Literacy Network has made connections. Some things that I wanted to bring up before she talks is just the idea of, we're going to look at a needs assessment. So really, it can be a balance sometimes, but really focusing on not only what you identify the employees need or what they identify they want, but one of the key components is really going to be what the employers identify. And I think that it's important to get management, supervisor, and if the atmosphere is okay, coworker feedback also on just what does everybody feel like is needed to improve communication and within the factory or within the workplace. Showing progress and program success, this can be a little bit tricky within the workplace setting. Autumn will talk to this a little bit more in detail. You can definitely do standardized assessments. I would caution to be very careful with assessment data that goes back to a specific employee. We're always going to make sure that workplace English classes are there as a benefit to employees, but never come back as punitive consequences or affecting their employment, their employability or their employment situation. So I think that the best option can either be customized assessments for the workplace or really focusing on competency-based portfolios and showing how learners in a group are completing the competencies that the employer and the instructor identified as being key and being the focus of the term. Logistics, we've seen the best outcomes, hands down, for on-shift programming. This isn't always possible. I've seen some mixtures of 30 minutes on shift, 30 minutes off shift, or combining lunch break and 15-minute breaks. But definitely the most successful workplace literacy programs I've seen have been on shift, paid. Most times there is an eligibility requirement. So if it's after probationary period, maybe, then employees are able to enter the workplace literacy program. We talked about really having authentic language and authentic practice. And so looking at your curriculum, making sure the best way I think to make sure it's authentic is job shadowing, and then asking the employer to help you with class materials. So what can they give you that you can bring into class? Can it policies? But even the materials that they work with. So I taught at a foam factory, and we needed to practice describing the different foams that they manufactured. And so I got samples for each of the different foams they manufacture. And that was something that was really authentic and helpful as we worked with it in class. So I'm going to close this. We're going to look at a sample needs assessment. Sorry here. Okay, So this is just a sample needs assessment. You know, I think you're going to get it in and send it out by email, and you can definitely edit this to fit your needs, but really wanting to know who are employees speaking with, and then when do they need to speak, when do they need to read and write. And you can definitely, like I said, edit this list. And I really like to know especially with supervisors, because it's often hard for the supervisors. They're the ones that have to fill in um, fill in for employees who are going during their shift to class. So I really want to know from them, what are their priority areas and what outcomes do they hope to see? Also, remembering to ask, in what ways do supervisors want to be involved in the class? I have found it can be intimidating to have supervisors in class sometimes, but it can also be really a fantastic benefit and good practice for employees. If supervisors are comfortable with dropping into class and participating in some dialogues, helping with homework, things like that. And so it's always nice to know from supervisors up front what their willingness is in being involved. Then we're going to take a look, before I hand it over to Autumn, we're going to take a look at a sample MOU as well. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger here. So I think the MOU, this is a really, really important part of the program. And there's a lot to consider. I know that sometimes we feel like, feel uncomfortable charging for services, but this is one area where it definitely can lead to a very profitable or a great program that will sustain other programming in our agencies. So really looking at everything that it costs your agency to lead a class. And we start with the MOU, start with the dates that it's effective, what the agency will do. The second section is what the employer will do. So there are some things that employers, they need to agree to come to meetings. They need to promote class attendance. They need to make sure that employees know that they're required to go to class, know for what reasons they can miss. Make sure that supervisors know class is required. Otherwise, you run into every week supervisors saying, oh, we're too busy, they can't go, we're too busy. It can be really disruptive. The employer needs to be responsible for the classroom space, for encouraging supervisors and managers to participate, things like that. And then the cost of the program. So when you're determining, Autumn has a great equation that she's going to share with everyone, but really make sure that you're including everything needed to give your program. So that's your instructor, it's travel time, it's all meetings, it's fringe benefits, everything. And like I mentioned, Autumn's got a great equation she's going to show. I get the question quite often is, oh, we've got grant funding, so can we just start like that and not do an MOU or not have any and not charge anything? And I think that's great. If you've got grant funding to start a workplace literacy program, I would still have an MOU with the employer, and I would highlight all of the costs, because, and then I would add something that says, from this date to this date, services will be free of charge because of this grant. But you want the employers to understand right up front what your input is, or what the cost of running the program is. And then once grant funding runs out, if there's not more, then they're not going to be surprised at the cost of continuing the program. So I'm going to turn it over to Autumn, unless there are any questions for me before Autumn takes it over. Just looking at the chat box. Oh, yes.
Anna,
Yep.
I don't see any questions.
The PowerPoint will be available afterward. Yeah. Okay. All right, Autumn. Autumn is, like Marcia mentioned, is from Literacy Network. They have a really, really exciting workplace literacy program, and I'm very excited that she's able to be on the webinar with us. And she's going to go through the questions that I prepared, but like I mentioned before, like Marcia mentioned before, please do ask questions. Please participate, ask questions as they come up. Okay, Autumn, I'm going to mute myself now, and I will hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you, Beth, and hi, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you about our program. As they mentioned, I'm with Literacy Network. We have actually been doing workplace literacy programs since the early 2000s. So well before my time. I've only been overseeing the program for about 3 years, but I have a lot of ideas to share with you. So I'm going to go through the questions, and then Beth and Anna, just feel free to interrupt if a question comes up or someone raises their hand. I'm happy to make it a conversation as we need to. So Literacy Network, as I mentioned, started with workplace literacy in the early 2000s. One of our earliest partners that formed a long-term partnership, we actually saw a joint grant with them. As Beth mentioned, that's a possibility. But Literacy Network then used that to build up to a fee-for-service model. Early on, we were collaborating with a lot of local businesses and hospitals. We worked with some manufacturing facilities, and I think some food locations. So we calculated our early fee for service just looking at all of the staff time that was going into it, and that's something that we've been very careful to recalculate every couple of years. So part of my job now is checking in to make sure that the model is still sustainable, that we what we are asking employers to contribute still covers all of our costs. Partners.
Autumn?
Yes.
This is Anna. I just want to back up one moment because your sound broke up just a little bit at the beginning there. And so I just want to mention, you said that with one of your partners, that one of the workplace partners back in the early 2000s, when you created the partnership, that you sought grant funding, joint grant funding, and that's how you initiated the program, but then you built it up to a structure where it was fee-based and then the program paid for itself.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and please let me know if the sound quality keeps cutting out.
Can you come closer to your microphone?
Yep, I'm about as close as I can get, but if I need to call in, that's another option.
Well, or just, yeah, that level, that volume is really good, so maybe if you just speak up a little bit, we'll be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to increase my microphone volume too. Let me see if that works. Okay. Is that a little bit better for everybody?
Yes, that is better.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like I said, Literacy Network has been doing this since the early 2000s. Currently, we connect with employers. A lot of what we see is word of mouth. Our board members are well connected in the community, and a lot of board members and other people who are affiliated with us spread the word about the program. We're sure to make sure that our board is well aware of it and can connect us to people. We've also had some of our tutors connect us, people who may work for a company and say, oh, that sounds like a good opportunity or a good option for my company. We've also seen partners come to us through just awareness of competing businesses offering classes. As Beth mentioned, this can be a really big benefit to offer in benefits packages. And we see that, once we're with one hotel chain, the other hotel chains in the area want to do something similar because they know that they're retaining employees. The company that's partnering with us is retaining employees. We have also presented, we have gone and presented at some professional associations like the Innkeepers Association in order to spread the word about the program. And just recently I'm testing, I haven't had any successful partnerships from this yet, but I'm testing reaching out to some selected employers who have a really good reputation among our current students or who we know are hiring recently arrived refugees. So I'm reaching out to these employers and saying, I've heard that you are offering really wonderful services to your non-native speaking employees. I'm wondering if you want to add this. So we have a big web on how people hear about us, but a lot of it and the initial part I think is word of mouth. Web searches are very common now too. People are finding us on the internet, which is always very helpful. In terms of what we invest, 16 years in, we are at a point where our program is self-sufficient. So all the contracts and fees cover the cost of time of all the involved teachers and the administrative time. And I recognize that, it wasn't that way to start with, and that's something you have to build up to. But as Beth said, I think it's crucial to charge that fee and to really look at what the program will cost you and to look widely. So we have an hourly rate that we use, and that, you know, we don't charge that for the initial meetings or the job shadow, any of this pre-program stuff that we do. But we do take into account some of the staff time we might need between semesters, some staff time for reporting and so on. So thank you. Someone pulled
Okay,
up,
wanted that up now. Okay.
yeah, somebody pulled up this cost breakdown. So this is something I've shared. You know, feel free to use it, play with it, change it as it fits your program. But I wanted to provide you of an example of some of the things that I consider going into the program. You know, so we look at the administrative coordination and support from the director or the person who's overseeing the program. We look at the instructor time, the planning time, the curriculum, even mileage, because we pay that. We want to look very broadly and include everything. If after that we can lower the hourly rate a little bit, which we often do, that's wonderful, but I think you need to know very clearly what all your upfront costs are going to be. So you can see that even for us, that includes personnel fringe. So we take into account, you know, when we hire someone, we're giving them benefits. So this is included in the materials, or if not, you know, I think it was in the email link that Marcia sent earlier, or Anna sent. You can plug in your own things. I encourage you to delete lines or add lines as necessary, but I found it really helpful to update this for Literacy Network every year, just to make sure that we're keeping up with the cost and we know exactly what it's costing us. So you can see too here, if you add it all up, about 93% of the cost is staff time, which is something that's really familiar to many of us, I'm sure. But I would encourage you, don't just consider that at the hourly rate. Think of all the other things that go into it. Are you paying the instructor while they're traveling to the site? You know, how much time goes into crafting whatever type of reports you choose? So this calculator, I hope, can help you out a little bit with that. We also have, in the past, we've done some semester rates. So looking at 12 to 16-week semesters and just offering a block rate. I find it much more convenient now to work with an hourly rate, since, you know, and not every employer has the same schedule, and we're working with many different contracts. So I think it's just easier to think of it per hour. So I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about the structure of the program, unless we have any questions about the cost right now. Okay, great. So for our program, as Beth said, we are actually on site at all of the workplaces. Most of our classes right now are occurring at the beginning of a shift or the end of a shift. Some of them are occurring or happening during an extended break. So that might be a case where, as Beth pointed out, they may be using up a half hour of their lunchtime, and then they may be on some additional paid time there. The biggest gains that we see are really where it's on regular paid time and where employees are fully supported by management to attend regularly. So the employers or the management are encouraging them from the beginning. Paid time it's a tricky thing to ask about, but don't hesitate on this, because we see that really increases attendance, it increases then outcomes, and it's just a better situation all around. The few places that I work with now that we're partnering with that don't have employees on paid time actually offer bonuses based on attendance at the end of the semester. So if a student has perfect attendance, they receive a bonus that's equivalent to what they would have been paid for that time. And again, I recognize that we're in a place with our program where we can be a little bit picky about that, and we can really push partners to consider paid time. But I think that the benefits for that are so strong and so evident, and I consider it, you know, part of like professional development. If my employer sends me to a professional development opportunity, that's not my personal time, that's work time. So I like to consider it in that same way. Most of our classes, same as Beth mentioned, are multi-level. So again, they're communication focused. We do a job shadow before we start the class or before we begin a new program. We learn all about the employees' roles beforehand, and then we build a curriculum plan and some lessons using that language. So when we started one of our partnerships at a hotel, we went in whole day and followed some of the employees around, listened for interactions with guests, listened to things they were saying, should have been saying, didn't say, and we got to listen in on a few native speaking employees too, just to hear, what the norm might be. So that it's a really useful time, and the few times where I've switched teachers between partnerships too, somebody new comes onto a class, I also try, if possible, to set up another job shadow so that the teacher can get all of that information as well. We have gotten to a point with a couple of our partners where they've had enough interested employers or employees, and they've been able to support multiple sections of a program so that we're able to split them out into levels, which is really helpful. But generally they're, one multi-level class across the board, and we're focusing on that workplace language. We also have had one partner where we had so many interested employees that we had to develop a team teaching model because there were 30 to 40 people interested in each class session. So it made it quite large, and it was very fun. Let's see, I see a question here. How or what do you use as a test? That's a wonderful question, Deb. We actually use CABE Classy speaking tests or our own internally developed reading writing tests. So when we use the TABE, we try to set up some time before the semester or outside of the usual class where we can meet students one-on-one. Usually we ask for a quiet break room or a meeting room so that we can, they have a little bit of privacy. Beth mentioned some of the concerns with using those tests. I will say one thing that we do is we pre-test students, we post-test after a couple of semesters, and we like to provide like a percentage gain. So we tell employers, oh, Ernesto increased 21% in his score, but we don't necessarily want to give raw data to all employers. So we're very careful and thoughtful about that. The internally developed reading writing tests are just a couple of pages, and I'm thinking of custodial work particularly, we have tests with some of the signs or things that they'll see around, the wet floor signs that they'll have to set up, and we have them writing on that. Those we haven't used as frequently. We actually developed those in response to one partner who wanted some more information on reading and writing development. But generally, most employers are interested in speaking and listening, and most of them are going to communicate with their employees in that way. We also provide reports to all of our program partners. We're in regular contact with managers or the HR contact, depending on who is our main point there. But usually we're in touch weekly just to provide really short updates. Sometimes it's a 1 or 2 line email just saying, hey, this is what we've worked on, and sharing a recent success. This is what we worked on, and in class, last week, Maria shared how she interacted with a guest, something of that sort. So we try to stay in regular contact just to make sure they know what's going on. And we also provide 1 to 2 page PDF, we call them highlights reports, at the middle and end of every semester. So in those, we provide a quick overview of what we studied in class. We add some pictures. We talk about successes, highlight if someone has had perfect attendance. They all should because they're at work, but it doesn't always happen. And we provide some feedback there. We also survey our students pretty regularly. We add their feedback in, and we try to survey managers and supervisors. I'll say usually in the beginning of a partnership, we get more feedback from managers and supervisors, and then as time goes on, they're less likely to respond to our surveys. But usually in a meeting, I can get them to talk about what they've seen, some developments and some changes. Any other questions before I discuss some of our challenges? Okay, so a few challenges. I think Beth mentioned this one too. There's varying degrees of staff support. When a partnership gets started, there may be some support or enthusiasm coming from one particular area, say upper management, but that support might not trickle down to the direct supervisors. So I've been in situations where supervisors see the class as like taking away from valuable employee time, right? Because they may have to cover during that time, or they're short-staffed. I've been in classes where the supervisors come in and pull out the employees because they say, I need this person right now. And that can be very tricky because you want the support all around, but of course you understand too that there are, you know, a lot of situations happening. It's a workplace, it's a business, they have a lot that they need to get done. So as much as possible, incorporating some of that information up front, talking about how the long-term benefits will play out, and involving those immediate supervisors and upper management in different ways. Inviting people to class is really important. You know, Beth mentioned this too. I really like to have structured activities for supervisor visits. I think when the supervisor comes in and there's a structured activity, first, they're not anxious because they're not ESL teachers. But then the students aren't nervous because it's a class activity like they've done many times before. And we see that work really well. And when they get a chance to sit down with the students and hear, you know, some of the language that they've learned and some of the things that they're doing in class, we see a little bit more support. We find a challenge in keeping momentum up for many years. One of our current classes has been running for more than 4 years, and they have every intention of continuing. They have really positive results and positive feedback. They have multiple levels of the class, but we do know that it's hard to keep it going for a couple of reasons. One, because that's time out of the work week every week, and students may have to work overtime to make up for some of that. But two, because students might get tired. It's a lot of work to study for 3 or 4 years in a row. So I think providing both the managers and the students with some of that feedback on progress, that may be some of those test scores I mentioned. It may be something a little bit different. I've had teachers who will, during presentations, write personal notes to students about how they're doing and point out some really specific things, and then look back on those a few months later and talk to students about their progress. So I think individualizing it, making sure we all can see the progress happening is really important. I work hard with all of our program partners to make sure they understand how long it takes to increase a language level. We see some variation in the field, but I like to give them the rule of thumb of like 100 to 150 hours. I equate that to approximately 3 semesters or a year with us. So if possible, we prefer not post-test before then, because we want to get as much rich language development in as we can before that. But then I also encourage, that's another way to encourage partnership to continue, to understand that it takes time. And when you ask most people what their experience with Spanish or German was in high school, they're pretty understanding of the time it can take to actually become fluent. Same like momentum, keeping consistent attendance can be a challenge. There may be fluctuations in daily attendance that are out of our control because the supervisor is coming in and pulling out some students so that they can go on the line. Unfortunately, we often see that the first people to be pulled out are the ones who most need class. So that is just a constant challenge. I don't have the ability to offer them an alternate plan at their manufacturing facility. That's just out of my control and out of my range of knowledge. But I do try to gently encourage them to come back. We also see, some roster changes between semesters. That may be because students decide, well, I've been in class for 3 semesters, I'm a little bit tired and I don't want to continue. Or it may be because an employer says that person no longer needs class. So each of those challenges, we deal with by discussing with them, again, pushing toward that 150 hours, showing the progress that's been made thus far. But we've come up with some creative solutions too. One of our current manufacturing partners has decided they've had 4 semesters of class so far, and they have so much interest and they can't afford more than 1 section. What they've decided to do is see a cohort. So they pick the first 18 people to sign up. They see them through 3 semesters, which is approximately 100 hours, have this big, huge graduation ceremony, celebrate them, and then sign up a new cohort who gets those 3 semesters, that full year. It's a really, really nice way to ensure that the opportunity is being spread around, but that the people who sign up initially do get, enough development as well. And of course, for Literacy Network, it's wonderful because we have a little bit of longevity in the program. We have some stability and some security. And that is the next challenge, of course, program stability and program instability. I think, you know, anybody who works at a literacy council is familiar with this through grants and some changes in funding. We don't always know what's coming. In this case, my teacher positions are dependent on these contracts. For the most part, we have partners after one semester sign up for a full year, so 3-semester contracts. That tends to work really well. That provides us with a little more stability. When a contract is not renewed, that's when I kick into overdrive and pursue another partner. We are at a point, like I said, where we have enough program stability that that's not a concern, but it certainly has been over the years, and it's something to plan for. You know, if this program doesn't continue, how will we shift that? Or will it be, you know, a limited term position if you're hiring for an instructor? The last 2 positions I opened up for Workplace were listed as limited time and then fortunately became full-time. But because I didn't have that guarantee of stability right off the bat, I wanted to be really honest with my candidates. And finally, another challenge that we see quite often is that balance between what students request to study in class, what managers want them to study in class, and then even what the teacher thinks they need. We do try to put managerial requests first, but I think when you have a really great partnership and you have a positive rapport, positive communication, the teachers and program managers can advocate on behalf of the students to explain a little bit of a difference. So I'm thinking, for example, you know, calling in sick to work or taking time off, reporting that you're not going to come in is a really important skill. And we like to pair that with calling the doctor and making appointments. We haven't had any manager come to us and say, hey, they shouldn't be calling the doctor on their work time, but it could happen, you know, and I think there are ways to advocate for why you might include that. That said, it doesn't come up often anymore because, well, the partners we currently have are long-term. They're very understanding of what their employee needs are. And we've even had a couple of partnering HR managers talk about how they want the English learned in class to be applicable in all venues of life. They want them to be able to go to the store more confidently and so on. So we have a little bit of leeway in the curriculum and we can respond more closely to student requests there. But it's something to balance and I think advocate for. Before I talk about some of my recommendations, do you have any questions? Okay, so a couple of my recommendations, and I know the first one can be a real challenge, but honestly, this is something I do recommend to plan for working with trained and possibly paid teachers as it is possible. I realize that for some literacy councils, that's something you have to build up to or plan for, but I think when you have not only a teacher who's well trained, maybe, you know, you can do some of the training, but someone who has a background in ESL and has a strong track record and is on paid time, you're going to see better results, right? The same with the employees attending class. I also really suggest starting with a pilot semester and then suggesting or building up to multi-semester contracts. I present that as the norm to new partners, that we do, you know, this 12-week session to start with to see how it goes, to learn a little bit. And then after that, we tend to move into a year contract if the partnership is good. I think, again, you need some of that stability and you need time to be able to mark progress. I also highly recommend marking progress in some way and celebrating it. I prefer to work in semesters or sessions that align with semesters so that we have a clear, you know, start for a new semester, a clear end at which we can celebrate some progress. We can take a week or two break. That's a natural time changes in rosters, materials, you know, inject some new lifeblood into some of the curriculum and ideas, and then the employers and the employees can come back for the next session. That said, you know, I've seen situations, and we used to at Literacy Network do year-round where the breaks were much shorter. It's always a possibility too, but I like the structure of a semester because it gives a natural time to celebrate and say, okay, you know, we can have a party for the end of the summer and then we can look forward to fall. It feels like school for a lot of people, so I think it's a nice structure.
Autumn, you're breaking up again. Either come closer, speak louder, or maybe a little slower. Thanks.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll make sure to watch my microphone levels here to make sure it's working properly. Yeah, and then a final recommendation is to use some sort of student contract or handbook. I recommend that initially come from the Literacy Council. Usually it goes through the employer. They're going to want to have a hand in what the stipulations are for students attending class. It's really nice coming from us first because then you're going to have it in plain English and you have some examples or some sample ideas of what to include. So we say, for example, if you're going to miss class, first you should let your employer know because you're not going to be at work. Let your teacher know if possible, and you can make up homework in these two ways. Some employers have participants sign a contract like that. Others just ask us to hand it out as a start of semester or a handbook. And then,
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah,
It
I'm sorry.
disappeared.
Okay, so we have those sample student contracts, and some employers have students sign them, or others will just ask us to hand them out as like a set of class rules in a handbook or a welcome to class sheet. Yeah, and then finally, I really think the last recommendation I have is just patience. It can take time to build up a reputation in the community so that people will, employers will come to you, and it takes time to build these programs. But I do think it's a very worthwhile endeavor, and seeing the unemployment rate in certain areas of the state as low as it is, I think employers are really seeking benefits like this to be able to offer.
Can you repeat that again? That disappeared.
Yeah, I said I think with the employment rate as low as it is in many parts of the state, employers are seeking some extra benefits to be able to offer and retain employees. So this is a good time to start building up some of those programs. Although it takes time to build that reputation, I think it's worthwhile.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm gonna go ahead to just this slide here. Kind of as a Autumn, thank you so much. That was so helpful. It was really, really helpful to hear just the really specific the specific experiences and very, very hands-on advice. So thank you very much. I'm just looking, so we've got just a couple more minutes, and I wanted to go a little bit off what Autumn mentioned, her recommendations for getting started. And much of what I was thinking on this slide is very similar. So just first, assessing your capacity, and really, like Autumn mentioned, detail every single cost that you would have in a workplace literacy class. So even if it's going to be grant funded, or if you're looking for a partner to help support the cost, or however you'll manage to offer the classes, making sure that you've got every cost detailed. And I love the Excel spreadsheet Autumn had, so I think that's a great tool, and really glad that you were able to share that. And then I like also that you mentioned, Autumn, that you had connections from your board of directors, from volunteers. So really leveraging the current connections you've got right now. Can someone on your board, are they close with a local business? Can they connect you? Can they set up a meeting? Something like that. And that's another I had written down also. If you have current funding to help offset an initiative program, ask a current partner to serve as a pilot. And I really like that, Autumn, that you said that you start every new partnership as a pilot, and that's just kind of the norm, and then you go into a more extended contract. I think also if you've got some funding to offset initial programming, a pilot would be a great way to promote programs. And let's see, and then crafting a case. So kind of what we talked about is how will, for each specific employer partner you're pursuing, how will improved communications help them? So if it's a factory, will it be an improved safety record and in decreased downtime? If it's a restaurant, improved customer service. So really looking specifically at your individual partners and looking at what they're going to get out of workplace literacy classes, because they really do get a lot. It's a huge benefit for the employees and the employers. And then as you build more partnerships, collecting testimonials from employers and employees to share with potential partners. So we've got just a couple more minutes. If anybody has questions or any comments, anything that you've done or started that you want to share with the group, if you raise your hand, we can unmute you. Otherwise, the materials will all be available, and you'll be getting an email with a feedback or survey. Please fill that out. We'd love to get your feedback. And then you can see the recording and materials in the members portal section of the Wisconsin Literacy website.
Well, Beth, let me take a moment to thank you and to thank Autumn for this absolutely fascinating session. I think you have done an admirable job of answering so many questions and making this so doable for so many of our members.
Good, and I think Autumn and I both, or I am, and I assume Autumn would be also happy to take any emails if after the fact, if later something comes up and you'd like to get in touch with us, please feel free to. I'm happy to talk with anybody about any specific situations or things that come up.
That's true for me too. I'm happy to take calls on some specifics.
As I said, Autumn will be happy to do that. If she's not, she can let you know. In an awkward situation there. Thank you, Autumn.
Perfect. Well, we want to thank everyone who's joined us today. And as Beth told you, this will be podcast and stored on our Wisconsin Literacy website, members only section, where you'll be able to listen to this again, share it with board members, share it with volunteers and staff. And I also want to remind you, in that section are all of the webinars that we have ever done. There's actually another webinar in there on this same topic from a couple of years ago that involved workers on a dairy farm. Another just very fascinating look at how to use workplace literacy in a very creative way. So again, we thank you all for joining us today for this webinar, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.